What is up, geeks and geekettes? It's a very special edition of the Countdowns to the Geekcast. My name is Ted, aka Steady, and I have a very special guest with me. I am almost certain you've seen his work all over your social media. He's probably on your DVDs and your Blu-rays and your 4Ks that you have on your shelves. And I am very happy to have him with us today, Mr. Orlando Mexifunk Arocena. How's it going, sir?
Hey, what's up, Ted? How you doing?
Fantastic, fantastic. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today. I've seen how busy you've been recently, and the work that you've been putting out has been absolutely incredible. And I wanted to make sure that I asked and said, let me just take a shot. Let's see if he'll have a few minutes to speak with us about what he's been up to and how he got started. So thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Hey, no, I mean it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. I'm so glad that you're a cool guy representing all the downtown city geeks. I'm one of them. We're all one of them. You know what I mean? So yeah, let's chill. Let's just let's just chillax. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. First and foremost, I know you are very prominently calling yourself a vector artist, and
Hmm.
all your work has this great style to it. Vector art, of course, I think what some people would say is made up of different lines and shapes, and it's a million layers upon million layers, and it comes together and just makes for incredible art. Let me ask you first, vector art. When did that kind of start for you? When did that sort of become your focus?
Oh wow. Okay. I remember the day specifically. It was at my first graphic design employment, which was in a very small, well, no, three-story brownstone that was being used as a headquarters for Trauma Entertainment by Lloyd Kaufman, the same team that did the iconic Toxic Avenger and Sergeant Kabuki Man, Terra Firma. They're over in Hell's Kitchen in New York, and the year was 1997. And I had gone from working, doing retail straight out
Yep.
of, I had graduated in 94 from Pratt Institute, Brooklyn. And at that point, there was no internet. We barely had cell phones, right? And the industry had just changed overnight into digital, right? Digital
Yeah.
graphics.
Oh, for sure.
I had graduated with just a traditional portfolio. Like we didn't even have a computer curriculum at Pratt at the time. Now they have a very strong one, right? So I was going around trying to pimp my portfolio to try to get an agency, and
Nice.
everybody wanted Photoshop, Illustrator, Quark Express, right? That's how back it was long
Sure.
ago. And I didn't have any of that know-how. So I ended up taking a job doing retail at Warner Brothers flagship store on 57th Street and Fifth Avenue in New York. And from
Wow.
there,
All right.
yeah, I was folding T-shirts. I was like, you know what? I forgot a plan. Well, I could try to hustle and make some money to get myself a computer and maybe take a few courses, right? I need to basically put myself in alignment where I want to be there. I don't want to be shuffling tables anymore. I mean, I did the whole restaurant thing throughout my high school years and promoting for nightclubs and DJs at the same time. So I was like, I really don't want to go back to that. So even if I have to take several jobs, as long as they're places that I really want to be, but I think that I could at least create a niche or wait for an opportunity to open up. Warner Brothers Studio Store was one of them. I was working there. I started off as just part time, folding clothes, being the welcomer. Hey, welcome to Warner Brothers Studio Stores. Hey, welcome, welcome. And they had four stories, and the last level of the building was their animation gallery, which was very small at the time. And I ended up visiting the person that was running it, made friends, and then I let them know that I was very interested. I had a background in animation. I had very fond of growing up with Warner Brothers, the whole characters, and They were like, you know what? I was like, maybe we could come up with like a promotional idea, maybe sell some of these celluloid,
Sure.
pieces as like one-off editions, or maybe we could work with doing serigraphs and limited editions. And they loved the whole idea that they're like, you know what, this is what we're thinking about right now. It's funny that you're obviously thinking in that same road. Would you be interested in going to learn more about the brand? I did. Flew over to Burbank Studios where they're at. Got to learn all about the history of Warner Brothers, what makes them significant. Um, that out of the whole artistic creative culture that's Americana,
Oh yeah.
there's two significant art forms that is really American, and you can check your encyclopedias or whatever you want to do. One of them is jazz, right?
Of course, of
Jazz is solely
course.
made in America, and the other one is animation, right?
Wow, yeah.
I've had friends battle me on that, like, no, 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 the Japanese came out with it before. Now, I mean, trust me, the, it's in the archives.
There you
So I
go.
was
Yep.
I was there for a while, and then they were opening up a new store in Two World Trade downtown in the World Trade Center, and they're like, we want you to go there and run it. And I was like, let's do it. Run the animation gallery, not the whole store. So I was there for about a year, a year or two, and then a friend of mine was like, "Hey, are you happy here?" I'm like, "Yeah, I was doing like red carpet galas for like Joel Schumacher when they did the whole Batman Forever, and we're we would have like we would treat it like an
Wow.
actual
Okay.
and like an actual art gallery, right? We had Sylvester Stallone coming in. Mark Hamill was one of my go-to Black Book clientels that I would basically call him up once in a while when I would get a Joker, production cell in the store, and I'd be like, hey, should I send you a picture? Because he would only collect the Joker since he was doing the voiceover for it.
Of course, of course.
So I was like, man, I get to talk to Luke Skywalker and the Joker every now and then. This job is fantastic, But I wanted more. My family expected more from me, graduating and investing so much in my college career that they were like, where else can we go with this? And
Yeah.
starting off at the basement level of retail and slowly climbing up, for me, I felt that it was going to take too much of an investment, and I got kind of worried. And I said, you know what, I want to go back to my fine art skills. I want to start, doing some fine art. So I took a job as a security guard at the Metropolitan Museum of Art
Oh my
on Fifth
god.
Avenue, right?
Wow.
And it was the perfect job. Honestly, if you're straight out of school and you can't land anything, go to your museums. Get a job as a security guard. Sure, you have to put on the suit, a tie, and hold up a wall and tell people no flash or don't touch this.
Yeah, yeah.
But the cool factor is, especially if it's a major museum, is that they'll have curated shows that are coming in, that are traveling, right? You'll have like big, big shows, whether it's, Cezanne show or a Van Gogh show, or a group show of like modern art. I mean, and sometimes you might be asked to chaperone the curator to make sure things are okay. Sometimes we'll have high five-star celebrities walk through that need escorts, and you get to chill out. Like I remember
There
one
you
time,
go.
me and my buddy, I got my buddy, my buddy growing up. His name's Adam. You know, got him a job there. I remember one time we had a chaperone Bruce Willis. And
Hey, there you go.
oh my god, he was so awesome because he was just like, hey, why don't you guys just chill out? It was during the those Met galas that are now famous. They kept on throwing them back then too, but they weren't
Oh,
as
nice,
catchy as
nice.
they are now. And I remember he was over at a Met Gala. My buddy Adam goes, so he was like, look, I got Bruce Willis with me. He's like, check it out. And I was like, oh, I was like, oh, smokes. Oh my God. I was like, all right, cool. I wish I would have signed up for that one, man. That's cool. But what I really enjoyed from it was that I had 3 days off consecutively, and then I worked 4 days. I got really, really up and close and personal with the artwork that was there, right? So
Right.
in an extent, I was uh, extending my art education, my art history education, right? I was also being influenced by some of the other guards and friends that I would meet there that we were all commiserate as well because we're all either striving artists or actors or musicians or writers, you know. and we all carried our own little sketchbook in our lapels and our suits, And whenever I was in a closed gallery with not too much traffic or visitors, I would whip that sketchbook out and start sketching whatever was in the on the walls or in the little, vestibules, bronze, copper statues, from the Middle Ages or from Greece or wherever it might be, Africana, whatever. You know, I love it. I love culture, and I was able to embrace it there. And one day specifically, I was drawing on post, and I heard these loafers tapping on the wooden floors. And I turned around. It's the actual president, Mr. Montebello, of the museum.
Oh, wow.
And you're not supposed to be reading a book. You're not supposed to be drawing. You're supposed to be guarding the artwork, even if you're the
Right,
only
right,
person
right.
in the thing. And he gave me a lecture, a shouting, a reprimand. I thought I was going to lose my job. I had just gotten a brand new apartment. At the time, I was like, man, I'm living cool. I'm not getting paid that much, but I could afford a new spot. I got my own little studio in the same apartment. I got a little balcony. I was like, oh, man. I started to go all down the drain once I got tapped on the shoulder and asked in a very Darth Vader kind of, dark essence voice of like, what in the hell are you doing in my gallery? Yeah.
Oh,
Um,
man.
and I swear if I was wearing Depends big boy diapers, I would have used them at that moment, seriously, because I probably would
Oh,
flush.
man.
I
Yeah.
ended up talking to him, and I let him do his thing. He yelled at me. He gave he really leaned into me. I thought I was going to lose my job. And then at the very end of it, he was like, well, hand it over. Let me see. And I was like, buddy, there's no way in hell that I'm going to basically relinquish my sketchbook to you for you to confiscate. This isn't high school. This isn't like,
Right,
there's no need for you to walk away with my sketchbook, right?
right.
And he's like, can I please, can you please hand it over? And I was like, listen, if I hand this over and you turn your back and walk away, I am tackling you and you will not walk out of this gallery alive. You know? Being from the Bronx, New York City, we have that reputation.
Oh, man.
so I proceeded to give it to him, and he was just thumbing through it, looking through it, and like stopping. He went from this really foul brow, angry, stern look to wow, okay, uppity eyebrows, eyes wide open, and he just said, "This is all yours." And I was like, "Well, it's ours. This is my museum sketchbook. I have a bunch of other sketchbooks. I have a subway sketchbook in the locker downstairs, which I only use when I'm riding the subway. I have another sketchbook for a project that I'm working on back home. So this is my museum sketchbook. Yeah, it's ours. And I guess I learned that from some psychology class at Pratt, where instead of being intimidating, you try to be a bit more, you know, um, equally balanced and able to be
Yeah,
somewhat collaborative, to make
yeah,
them feel like there's a little bit of investment here just in case he was going to light a match and just torch the whole thing. So I was like, it's our sketchbook. And he said, wow, so take me through how you do one of these because it looks like it's ballpoint and I don't see any pencils. And I was like, yeah, I just use ballpoint. And
wow.
he was like, he was like, okay, that's that's pretty interesting. And he was like, okay, take me through this, as far as like um, what kind of ballpoints are you using? I was like, just standard ballpoints. I'm a kid from the Bronx. I grew up with just whatever was around me. Whatever my parents would just leave on the kitchen counter. I'd take that along and hey, that's mine. I'm going to draw this. And
Yeah,
I was like, okay, so don't you find that difficult? And I was like, well, it's almost like the philosophy that I've grown to at least embrace right now, being out of school already a few years. What I tend to sketch, I tend to want to do, and it's just like life. In life, you have to make certain decisions. You have to pace yourself, and if you make a mistake, you have to be able to make it work to your favor, or you have to accept it and turn the page and start fresh. Right?
wow.
I was like, you can't erase in your life. You don't have those big money, moments where yeah, I could Command Z or I could basically erase and nobody
No
would know.
regrets.
No regrets, right? So I told him this is basically how I approach whatever I'm sketching at the time. And he was really, really, impressed with it that he was like, listen, I want to invite you to submit to our annual um, gala. And I was like, what? And he was like, yeah, it's a jury group exhibition that's held open just for our patrons, our paying patrons. It's not for the general public unless you basically have like a newspaper or a news reporter who wants to come in and do a story. But it's basically, it's an actual exhibition. It's a credited show. It's jury. So if you don't get
Wow.
in, I'm sorry. For the next 2 years, I worked there, and for the next 2 years, I basically can say that I exhibited artwork at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It was awesome.
Incredible.
It was
Incredible.
awesome. Right?
From being a security guard to being to having
Yeah,
your art shown in the gallery. That's amazing.
yeah, and it's dangerous because I was in my mid 20s, and I'm already like, yeah, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm gonna have like one man group shows all the way down in the village and in Chelsea. I'm like, oh man, the phone's gonna start ringing. I'm gonna be like a household name. Man, I am so glad I went through this at an early age because for the next few months I was just like, oh man, nobody's calling me up for shows. But I did do a few group shows. I did start an initiative called Uptown Arts where we're bouncing around different communities and calling art for artist submissions. And at the time, we're holding up pop up galleries, and I would throw a microphone in the middle, and people would just gravitate and just drop some spoken word, you know. And then I had Russell
Yeah.
Simmons come by and visit one of the shows, and he was like, "Man, I'm loving
Wow.
this. I'm loving this. I'm loving this." And then next thing you know, you got like Russell Simmons doing HBO, um, drop poet slams, and I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I guess there was some influence there, some inspiration,
Yeah.
you know. Uh,
Absolutely.
but it's that's what you get from living in big city, And one of my first clients and one of my dearest friends to this day is Fat Five Freddy, right? Uh, UMTV Raps. Now I'm showing my age, but he was also like the blinkety light Martian in Blondie's, Rapture, right?
Oh, no way. Nice.
Yeah, and he was one of my um, first freelance clients because working at the museum, I was able to stay with my computer. Got my computer, and I just started just instead of going out and partying, I would just put my nose to the ground and just like, okay, what does this do? What does this do? What does this do? I've spent so much money on like, a super big monitor, on the Wacom tablet, on the big huge Canon scanner. Like I I must have spent like at least 3 to 5 different paychecks, and just living off crackers and cheese for a while. And I learned enough that I was like, okay, cool. I started getting clients. I started doing these shows. I started doing the pamphlets. And I've always wanted to do some graphic design. Living in the city, I would always be bombarded by it, whether I'm waiting for a train on the subway platform and seeing all these big posters for movies or big posters for sports ads or cosmetics. That at the same time I'm looking just alongside of that, and I'm seeing like the latest tag up by the neighborhood, writer, or a big blazed mural on my way to the subway. You know what I mean? So
Oh, for
I was
sure.
being I was being bombarded by both sides with culture and color and commercial. It got to a point where I said I wanted to either be a teacher in Mexico and teach art and illustration, or I submitted my first portfolio with my computer to Trauma Entertainment. And they both came back at the same time. And I said, you know what? It would be great to go to Mexico and be a teacher. I could live easy. But being in my 20s, I was like, you know what? I don't even know myself to want to be a teacher. I'm not there yet. Like, I could.
Yeah.
It's a tempting, easy way out. You know what I mean? That I
Sure.
could be like, okay, cool. I could just draw all day and like chill out in Mexico and take it easy, or I could really push myself in an area that I could totally make money, hopefully make a name for myself, make some really good networking, and see where it takes me from there. It's almost as if, hey, I could retire in my 20s Not really, because I don't have any real investments or money yet, or I could go do some work for an actual movie studio. And that's what I ended up doing. Um, I remember one summer day, because I got there in the summer. Yeah, it was probably within the first month. I was doing all this Photoshop and scanning, and my creative director, who's one of my best friends now, he was just like, "Oh man, I love the way that you draw this, that, the other thing. Lloyd loves how you draw his main mascot, Toxic Avenger, which had gone through so many iterations of different creative hands throughout the years, from cereal boxes to Saturday morning
Oh, for
cartoon."
sure, for sure.
Right. So I was giving him a little bit of an edge, but still keeping that, I was almost drawing him into like a Japanese animation. Right.
Nice.
And
So that was like your
yeah,
first
because
venture
yo,
into like IP.
IPs, and I was working on with previously with Fat Five Freddy on like um, base IPs, like logos for a bunch of hip hop bands that were coming out,
Oh, that's awesome.
vocalists, doing logo branding, and I actually did the logo for his record label called In the Middle, which was like a cityscape, and above it was a record player with the needle touching ground. And I made business cards for him, and he went to a party one night where he met up with Lauren Hill from the Fugees,
Of
and
course, yeah.
she saw the
Legendary
logo.
Lauryn Hill.
Yeah, she saw the logo, and she was like, "Oh snap!" And I wish I was able to record it back then, but he ended up calling me up. We didn't have cell phones like we do today. You know what I mean? So he ended up calling me up and leaving a
No, no,
message
no.
on my phone, and it was Lauren Hill going, "Hey, oh, what's up, Mexifunk? This is L Boogie. I just saw your latest logo for Fab. I love it. It gets my gears spinning. Hopefully, we can hang out one day. Take care." I
Oh
was
my
like totally
god.
impressed. I was totally impressed. And then the next month, I hear that she's like working on a video. The video comes out, and it's that video of everything and anything. I think I forgot the title name, but it's where she's walking on a nice breezy summer day through Manhattan, and then towards the very end of the panel, you see that there's a cityscape with the record player, and she's
That's
walking on the
right.
record
And
player.
she's
And
walking on it while it's spinning.
yeah, well, she got that from my logo, man.
That's insane. Wow.
So at that point, I'm like, man, when am I going to get paid royalties for these things? Damn it,
Oh my god, yeah. Holy cow.
But logo hit me on a very strange moment in trauma where um, Lloyd Kaufman, Uncle Lloyd, as we call him, and we still call him today. He's excellent. He's a really good supporter of the arts. He needed a 3-story tall taxi, and he wanted to see like first drafts by that evening. And I was like, all right, cool, no problem. I draw fast. So I decided not to take lunch, and I stood in, and I'm drawing my heart out and ripping out all these different toxies in my sketchbook that I would later scan and then take it into Photoshop. And my creative director, I have done already like 3 pages, 4 pages, and my creative director comes back and he's like, I'm like, hey, what do you think? And he's like, bro, these look dope, man. I like this one. I'm like, cool, yeah, I'm gonna scan it in and take it into Photoshop. And he's like, what? What are you talking about? And I was like, yeah, I'll do it high res and I'll just send it off. And he's like, no, man, we need a vector file.
Ooh.
They're gonna blow it up to be the size of a building, And back then, again, it's not like all the luxury and creature comforts of the whole digital menagerie that we live in. We didn't
Yeah.
have it as easy back then. You know what I mean? Uh, but now we could probably do it in Photoshop and they wouldn't have an issue. Like, okay, cool, whatever. It
Oh,
won't
for
look
sure.
as dodgy. But back then they were like, no, this thing's got to be vector. We need it super clean, and the only way you could do it is in vector. And I was like, oh, and they're like, we interviewed you and you said you knew vector. And I was like,
Oh,
oh,
no.
well, yeah, sort of,
Oh,
And
man.
he was like, well, you've got the remaining, I don't know, 5, 6 hours of the day. And if you can't do it, then I suggest you pick up that cardboard box and you start packing your desk to go home because,
Wow.
we need it and we need it fast.
Wow.
So I opened up Illustrator and I was like, okay, cool. I asked him for one favor. I was like, listen, if I scan this image in, how do I bring it into Illustrator? And he was like, yeah, no, you do it like this. And I was like, cool. So I was able to scan my image, bring it into Illustrator. And this was basically the same routine that a lot of vector artists early on in the days would use. This process of doing something on paper, sketching it out, bringing it and translating it digitally through a scanner, and then bringing it into Illustrator, and then using that as a visual template and guide for them to be able to plot out their points and plot out their shapes and build up their illustration. Right. So I was doing that same thing. I said, okay, cool. I went into the brush and the brush didn't respond to anything like Photoshop. And I was like, I'm not using that. I opened up the pencil, same thing. I was like, why is what's up? What's up with these like points and these lines? And how come it's just not like a real pencil like in Photoshop? I kept on relating everything to Photoshop because it was like so easy. Photoshop is so forgiving, so easy. It's
Yeah.
welcoming, you know?
Yeah.
And then I said, okay, what's this thing? And I started realizing really fast that if I put down points, I was basically making shapes. And I said, okay, oh, I get it. No problem. Luckily, I had gone to school with a bunch of architects, and they were like, hey, sometimes we have to plot shapes out in order to get the right real estate, blah, blah, blah. So I went back to that and I said, okay, how can I make this really simple? Right? I can't blend anything like in Photoshop. I can't airbrush like in Photoshop. I got to break this down very simple and within record time. So I started thinking about all the animation cells that I would look through from the whole gallery from Warner Brothers, right? So I was like, okay, cool. That's how we're gonna have to do this. I'm gonna have to do this like with the way that they do their cell shading by hand, right? A base,
Right.
build up your middle tone, build up your dark tones, then your highlights. And that's exactly what I did. I referred back to my knowledge of animation, my passion for Japanese animation or Warner Brothers animation, and said, okay, that's what I'm going to do in Vector. And it's up on my Behance page, and
Hmm.
it's there. It's there. And it's a very simple illustration of him with his hands crossed, and he's got his mop in hand, and we've got some really quirky buildings on the bottom. And I submitted that by the end of the day, and he was like, "That's the one. I like that one. Let's go with that one." And I was like, "All right, cool." And from that moment on, I said, "You know what? Whoa, that wasn't too tough, but oof, there's something interesting here. Very interesting." And I always love strategizing things.
Sure, sure, sure.
And I said, "Okay, if I'm one of these people with big eyes and big dreams and big hopes of trying to make something out of myself in the creative digital world, do I want to be one of a million or do I want to be one of just a few?"
Absolutely.
Right. So I started pushing away quickly from Photoshop and saying pretty soon there's going to be so many Photoshop artists out there that they're going to be, fighting amongst themselves to get a morsel. Right.
Yep,
And if
yep.
I go into the vector world, there's not too many people there because the people that are there are the industry folks that are doing logos or they're using it for page layouts, right? For like
Right.
advertising, for like, POS and stuff.
Yeah.
If I could basically do the way that I do my graffiti or my oil paintings or my acrylics or my airbrushing in vector, if I can make it look like that, I think I might be onto something. And that's how it all started off.
I love how it's like every experience you had all culminated into this new skill set. Like you mentioned, you pulled from your
Mhm.
animation experiences, you pulled from what you've learned working as a security guard over at the museum, and all of this kind of rolled up into this newfound skill that you kind of didn't know you had, but you
Yeah.
were like already trained and ready to really excel at it. I absolutely love that story. Um, it's
Sorry that it
fantastic,
took a
man.
while. Like I told you, man, I love storytelling. So I'm sorry that
No,
it took a while for us to get there.
it's absolutely fantastic, and um, you've made it such a fantastic. Your name is everywhere right now. Your name is out there. Like I mentioned, every time I see a new product being promoted for a movie or something, I am not surprised to see your name on it anymore. and I love how your style. I've seen you a lot of your personal work have a lot of your heritage and your your Mexican and your Cuban roots already embedded into it. But now when you get to put something out there that actually calls for those kinds of things to be added, talk to us about this steelbook case, the Talocan steelbook case for Namor. It's absolutely gorgeous, and you must have been thrilled to get the call to do something that is so heavily influenced in this sort of Mayan, Mesoamerican sort of theme.
Yeah, no, I mean, you just flashed that graphic, and I'm still there, like, you know, big smile, big grin. It's the truth, it was a very odd way upon how that came to be. I was called up to work with Disney slash Marvel, again over in Burbank. We were doing it remotely here, and initially the project was to do a promotional set of posters for the release of Black Panther 2. And it was working with the poster posse, the team that I often get to be invited to do official commissioned work for a lot of the movie studios. And they're also in California. They're in Los Angeles, right outside of Burbank. Awesome people, Don Thompson and Rebecca Thompson. And we're always strategizing. I'm always like, hey, listen, I did this quick sketch, and I'll send it over to them. Like, hey, is there any way that we could get in contact with the crew that's in charge of the marketing crew or the account crew that's in charge of this property? I'll always try to feed them stuff, see whether there might be a hook, whether we might have an opportunity to play. I've
Sure,
and it's taught me to stop sketching so much and posting official IPs on my Instagram or on my Twitter, because I found out that basically you could do a really great piece of fan art, and then when the client sees it, they're like, oh man, we wish that we could use it. And then you're like, hey, no, you could use it. Just let's talk about the rights and usage, and how much you want to pay. And they're like, no, it's already out there. It's
oh
already out.
man,
It's not exclusive anymore. And that's what I try to tell a bunch of people that DM me about for some insights. And I'm like, hey, it's tough. It's tough when you're actually getting real gigs, because you don't get that much time to do the fan art tributes. I'll sit down and watch a show or watch a movie, and I'll come back and I'm like, I have my juices going, like, oh my god, I got to do something for that right now. And then I got to put the brakes on and go, wait a second. Not only do I have all this other responsibilities that I have to issue out, but if I was to do that, I got to make sure I don't post it straight up to my social without first trying the avenues of the studios, right? Who might be
absolutely.
interested in wanting to buy it. So that's a little heads up for you folks out there if you're listening. But when it came to this particular job, um, they actually wanted two posters for so that it could be kind of a reward at ticket sales at particular theaters, right?
Sure,
And I had done the side portrait of Shuri, right, in
sure,
the new mask,
yeah,
right, in the shape of Africa, in the continent of Africa, and with all these nice lights and angles and angularities. And they're like, oh my god, we love it, right? We love it. And I said, okay, here's what the basis of what Namor was looking like. And in the industry, when you're doing resemblances of actors and actresses and all that, I always try to do the faces as tight as possible, especially if I'm up against a deadline. And
sure.
I was up against a tight deadline, and I was getting ready to go to MCM Comic Con in London for
Oh
the
wow,
first time, right? So I was like, man, I don't want to bring work with me on the road. It's possible, but I don't enjoy it. So I sent them. I had done Namor's face like in 3 hours, and it was really tight. And I was like, got to submit this so that they could send it through for approvals. They would send it over to the actor's camp and his representatives, agents. to
All
review
right.
and say, okay, is it hitting on mark? Oh, we got to fix something. We got to make his nose bigger. There's always something.
Sure.
So the Disney Marvel, client saw it and they're like, oh man, this is awesome. This is going to make some really good posters. This is going to be for a really good poster thing. And then he came back really. The email came back and he was like, we can't do it. And I
Oh,
was like, oh, what's wrong? Is the face not coming out right? He's like, no, the face is hitting great. They actually love it. It's just legally, we have a contract stating that every piece of visual equity or posters that are being created for the movie, if you show one actor, you have to show at least three more.
weird. Okay.
So if you look at a lot of the posters
Yeah.
for Black Panther 2, you'll see that there's never just one character, for the opening marketing, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Promotional posters. So I was like, oh man, I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, no way. I was like, no way. So he's like, yeah, what a bummer. I'm sorry. And I was like, all right, well, we've got one poster done, you know. And then a week before my wife and I were supposed to fly out to go be in London, I get the email from the poster posse and from Disney Marvel, and they're like, hey, we got this great idea. We want to use this Nimor that you submitted earlier to this other department, but we want to use it now for home entertainment. And we've got this really cool way of promoting the movie. And we're going to basically have you do a limited edition Namor series or just one off. And then we're going to have another artist do the Black Panther piece. Well, we like it for this date. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm supposed to be in London, I'm supposed to be in London.
Yeah.
And the one thing with me is that, I work really, really fast. And that's not even me like bragging or patting myself on the shoulder. It's just from working at so many different design agencies and, different, just my background has conditioned me to go, okay, cool, I got to get this done in 3 hours. I'm going to get it done in 2.5. That way I have a half hour just to talk with the client and see if I could do anything else. So I got it done. We didn't go too many rounds. It wasn't that difficult. And I was really, really honored. I was really, really honored to represent, Namor and Talokian clan, and um, it's one of the highlights within my portfolio that they actually had a Mexican artist do something that was really, really ceremonial, and we did a bunch of interviews for the promotional reel for it. And you know at the end of it all, I was really, really happy that us Latinos, Mexicanos, whatever you might be, of very Latin origin, right, or descendants, now we have our own king within the MCU,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
and, and makes us smile or hold our head up a little higher to see what the future would bring within that storyline of culture and heritage, right?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I'm pretty psyched. I'm very, very psyched about it, and very,
What
very grateful.
do you need a lot of inspiration when it comes to something like that? Like, do you request to see some of the scenes or the whole movie, or is it
Always,
just kind of
not
photos?
always.
What do you need?
Well, with this particular project, I had gone back into a few books that I was reading while standing at the Metropolitan Museum of Art as a guard. I was really big into folklore and myth from different parts of the world, and um, I was reading a few books about Aztec, Mayan um, mythology, or just stories that they would have.
Sure.
And there is one about Quetzalcoatl, right? Kukulkan, who basically is
Clan,
Namor, right?
right?
It's basically Namor. And what they believed was that Quetzalcoatl was part of like this origin deity story, represented creativity, and he he basically left. He left um, the whole existence of the Aztecs and the Mayans to themselves and said, "Listen, I'll return, and when I return, you'll definitely know it's me because I'll be totally shining in gold, and I'll be riding a raft built out of snakes, out of serpents." And they're like, "Okay,
Sure.
great." They kept on with their existence, and they waited and waited, and then when the conquistadors came, when Hernando Cortez came from Spain and made it to land, the first few Aztecs that saw the landing of this conquistador went crazy and started running back to the high priests to let them know that Quetzalcoatl had landed because Hernando Cortez was coming in his gold shiny armor
Oh my god.
on a raft made out of wooden planks that looked like a bunch of
Snakes.
serpents lined up. And they
Wow.
just opened the doors to him and said, welcome back, our king." And that's why there was no big battle between the two mixes of races or cultures. Well, I took that story, right, and I said, you know what? Let me let me pivot and put it on its ear and say, instead of Hernando Cortez, let's do it Namor, and let's have him totally flourished with his florals and his feathers and his gold, helmet, you know, and have him be emerging from the surf, from the ocean, and making a landing on ground. And let's
I
have
love it.
some of the other support characters also coming out of the ocean, you know, in their armored regalia. So I said, that's the story. It's our king. Our king is coming from the depths of the ocean and landing to, for us to bear witness. And people just wigged out. People at Disney were like, "Whoa, that's so deep. That's so deep." And I didn't get to see the movie. I didn't get to see the movie while I was creating the piece. Often with
Wow.
some of the Disney Marvel projects that I get to do until recently. You know, um, it was all, "Hey, we can't give you access to the movie, or we can't give you access to the script, or we can't give you access to imagery, but we could totally give you access to the trailer and to some of the promotional pictures that have already been released." I'm always, I always smirk at that because I'm like, well, don't you want something fresh? Don't you want something that's not going to be something already shown within your promotional reel? Like, help me out here. And with
It sounds challenging that way.
Oh, it's always challenging, but then if you're doing something that's going to be somewhat for home entertainment or for a poster that's promoting the film, you want to do your best. You want to do your best
Absolutely.
that are going to attract an audience, and it depends whether this is going to be a piece for merchandise or whether this is just a piece for promotional visibility. You want to basically make sure that what you're conjuring up is in direct relationship of the property or the narrative that you need to follow, right? I mean, if I was to design this home entertainment Namor piece, and for some reason I gave him a leopard patterned helmet instead of the colorful flowers, people would just scratch their head and go, "Well, there's something wrong there." You know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
it's very vital for the studios, for the account teams to help support if they really want something unique and something that's going to be 100% in line with their vision. Right. There's other studios that I get really great access behind the scenes stuff, like Lionsgate. Lionsgate treats me like a king, man. I mean, treats all their artists like kings. When I did the John Wick 4 poster, I had actually started with them back in December of 2021 when John Wick was supposed to release during COVID, and then they held back and they wanted to do a little bit more editing. Um, I got to see John Wick from a director's cut, meaning a lot of these digital 3D graphics weren't even embedded yet. The
Wow.
soundtrack was there, but they were like holding cards. Hey, this would be where the Continental has now exploded, and just so you would see like a big green wall, and you'll see the two actors, Lawrence Fishburne and I forgot the other guy's name, just walking as like these two little guys, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
whoa, or the whole, and I don't want to spoil too much for people that haven't seen it, but I think the whole world's already seen it.
They've
But
had
it
time.
was,
They've had time.
yeah, but, with that project, we got access to see the movie. We got access to all the behind the scenes photography, the actual stills photography. And I had no questions of like, hey, does this happen in the movie, or is this the wrong color to use, or it was easy going. It was easy going. I must have done from 2021 to right before to the release. I think I must have submitted about 15 different poster designs in Vector because they would
Wow.
come back to me and be like, hey, the first one was to be a teaser, right? And that was a whole different look, a whole different look. And then from there were a bunch of different Comic Cons. They're like, hey, would you like to do one for a Comic Con? I was like, yeah, I'll submit something. And, it didn't grab. And they're like, hey, would you want to do another one? I was like, no, you know what? Give it to, why don't you consider one of the other artists, one of my other friends that are on there, you know,
Oh, very nice.
and oh no, man, I'm always, wherever I could pass the buck or at least do it in such a way that it helps someone else have a door open up for opportunity. That's fine, man. This industry is really tough. It's really, really tough to be an artist or a designer on your own. And when these opportunities come up, um, I embrace them. But at the same time, if there's any wiggle room, like, hey, how many how many more posters may you want? I'm always thinking about some of my other friends that are out there. You
I
know?
love it. Sharing the wealth, brother. And this is the John Wick poster that everybody was just raving about when you dropped it. I also wanted to call out the Power Rangers 30th anniversary poster that you did, because that was sort of a big surprise to the fans. Just the entire Netflix project that was announced, and then this poster that you did beautifully just encapsulates one of the many action sort of shots that we've seen in the Power Rangers franchise. Um, do you kind of try to reach out to some of these franchises, or are you a little hesitant when you maybe not as familiar? Power Rangers exactly. Are you a huge fan? When you got that call, was it like something you were like ready to dive into?
Um, yeah, sort of. You know, um,
Yeah,
uh, when
awesome.
it comes to like trying to score projects, um, there's two ways to go about it. All right, you got the dry call, as we used to call it. Literally when we
Sure.
used to pick up a phone. Now it's emails or through social, and I highly recommend it. I highly recommend, uh, on purpose, you know, tagging a director, tagging somebody that you uh, know works at a particular agency or studio or for a brand. Doing your research. A lot of this, people might be like, "Oh man, you're trolling people." No, man, a lot of it's investigating. Honestly, seriously, you got to be your
Hustling.
own magnum PI to hustle a little bit, and do the do that groundwork. You know, um,
Absolutely.
I've been a me- I've been an active participant on LinkedIn since they started. All right,
Wow.
and it's not until now that you start seeing a lot of artists like, oh my God, LinkedIn. Ah! And they start like, treating it like Facebook and, hey, I just did this today. And I just did this today. And I just did. That's great. That's great. I love the excitement, Um, and that's what I would recommend people to do. Like, hey, do your research. Like back in the days, if I was on a trip, and I would stop by the local magazine shop and check out the magazines that they have there. Everything from National Geographic to regional, magazines or newspapers. In any of those periodicals, there's a credits list, a masthead with all the names of all the people that work in the different departments, from your editor, chief editor, to your chief creative director. I would write those names down because again, back then we didn't have cell phones and snappy snap, So I'd write those names down and basically I would figure out what's the address to their headquarters. And I would send them by snail mail, right? A packet of just 5x7 promotional pieces and like a small little readme resume. Now, what we're doing is that I'm using that same technique. I'll be on a flight, you know, to the other side of the world maybe, and I'll bring with me a whole bunch of magazines that I picked up at the airport, right? Or maybe better yet, I've already landed in that forward destination, went to their souvenir shop, picked up all these magazines, and now I'm in the hotel and I'm looking through the magazines and going, wow, I'd like to see if I could do something for this magazine. And I go through the credit block masthead and I go, okay, cool. I go to their website and see whether they have anything there. Oh, they also have social. They have Instagram, they have Facebook, they have Twitter. Okay, great. Let me start DMing these people. Let me start hunting these people down on LinkedIn. Let me start sending them kind of like an invitation to become part of my network. Right? It's not
Absolutely.
that difficult. It's not that difficult. It's just, whether these people are on the receiving end. Some people are like, hey, man, don't send me anything to my LinkedIn page. I'm not soliciting any, I'm not inquiring any solicitations. It's like that. And that's fine, man. That's fine. If you have a process for me to have to submit something, well, at least I'm negotiating with you on bare bones right now.
Yeah.
At least you know that I exist. You've already visited my profile on LinkedIn, and you're like, well, okay, cool. This guy's pretty cool, but I'm not the guy that you need to submit all this stuff to. So here's an email. Submit it here. Great. I think that's an achievement all on its own. You just made a connection that you didn't have yesterday, and now you have a door that's waiting for you to try to open up for opportunities. Right. Always trying to do the hard work and try to look at everything in a positive light. So
Absolutely.
when doing Power Rangers, I did it with my great friend Tom and Tim Mendola from Mendola Artists out of New York City. And they called me up one day and I said, oh, you sitting down? I'm like, yeah, I'm always sitting down, busy. I'm busy playing on this movie poster, man. What's up? And they're like, hey, Hasbro called and they want to do Power Rangers with you. And I'm like, oh, okay. And last year, I think I had every year I try to talk and have a conversation with my reps. Right, I have Mendola as a rep, and I have Post Posse as like semi rep, semi agency, and then I have Onyx Apex for like my fine art stuff. And every year I kind of talk to them about like, hey, here's the goals that we should try to set. Right, I think it's very valuable as an artist
Sure.
to have these associations, these professional associations that are going to help you try to aggregate and get and collect more visibility and more projects. Right? I hate calling it work, seriously, because I'm not there laying blacktop on a hot sunny road. You know what I mean?
I got you. I got you.
And I enjoy it. So the conversation for that year was I want to start doing more illustrations for some of the toys that I grew up with. Those toy companies that were vital to me. Hasbro, Mattel, Kenner.
Kenner, absolutely.
Kenner, absolutely, right? So when he called up with Hasbro and and these crazy, colorful mofo's, right? All right. I was
Absolutely,
like,
yeah.
I was like, oh my god. I was like, okay, great. They're the generation behind me, right? I'm in my 50s. So when they came out, I was already in college, but we're all kids and we're there with our cereal even when you're in your 20s, like watching these guys jump around and do somersaults and the horrible acting that you got to laugh at. And I was like, yeah, I'm totally down. What do they want? They're like, well, they want to do one key art, one poster. And I was like, okay, great, no problem. Got on my vector, put together a presentation, right?
Sure.
And a lot of that comes back from, after the museum, after Trauma, after, shooting gallery, which was like a Harvey Weinstein type of, offshoot. It was his. Um, I ended up doing promotional marketing for magazines, and then I went into being the head illustrator for PepsiCo and Pepsi International, and then I went into being a creative director, design director for Diageo and Johnny Walker, and having about 34 art directors to mentor every day and do
Wow.
presentations for. So I was learning a lot about commercial design, advertising, marketing, brand building, strategy. Right? It's just not pretty pictures. I hate just doing pretty pictures. I get a brief, I ask questions. What does this mean to you? What does it mean for the brand? Like, what's the goal? How many eyes do you need this to hit? Like, I just don't do pretty pictures. You know,
You gotta tell the story.
I got to tell that visual narrative of the brand property, right? Now I'm getting too nerdy, too geeked out over here, and
It's
I know
great,
that's the
man. It's
title of the
great.
show,
It's
man. But it's
great,
like
yeah.
It's what makes the difference, right? When you have a conversation with a client that's presenting you a brief and they're thinking, oh, he's just an artist. He's going to ask, you know, how much wiggle room does he have for freedom, and can he do some crazy absurd style? I'm the opposite. I start going, okay, well, what in what fiscal quarter is this going to release? How many how many showcasings are you going to try to hit? How many different retail accounts are you going to try to do? And they're just like, what does that matter? And I'm like, it matters significantly because there's different ethnographics with throughout different regions, and
Sure, sure, sure.
there's a lot that goes into that, a lot of different planning, so I use a lot of that strategy into my artwork. When it came to the Power Rangers, they wanted one poster. I ended up giving a presentation of about 15, right? Because I did them really quick. I don't recommend you guys out there doing and submitting 15 unless you feel comfortable with it. If you're able to do them without any sweat and you're not really burning the midnight oil, like, oh, I got to do another one, you know, do what feels great. The standard is three comps, right? I delivered 5 times more than that because I wanted to sell different usages of the artwork, not only just one key poster. I said, hey, here's a key poster, and doing my research, understanding the brand and what they deliver to the audience, other than action figures and really cool, uh, really cool action figures. you know, I was like, they also use artwork for a lot of packaging. There you go. So I was like, okay, here's what you asked for, and here's what we could also use for packaging.
Sure, sure.
And they're like, holy crap. They're like, okay, you know what? That one key art poster turned into, let's do 3 key art posters, and let's do 48 character illustrations for the boxes.
Oh my god. That's incredible.
All right.
When you hear that
So
number, are you already overwhelmed, or are you just sort of already gears turning, you're
no,
planning
I
out,
mean, the,
strategizing?
I'm definitely planning because I'm like, all right, cool. How am I going to really budget and make sure that I'm not making the client feel like, where did the artist go, man? Where did he go? We're not hearing anything from them. We're not getting any vital signs. We're not getting any emails. Like, we're not getting updates. So I make sure that I'm able to have this repertoire with them, this conversations,
Ah,
this relationship with them, right? Because
build
at
a
this
rapport,
point,
yeah.
yeah, because at this point, the Mandola artists, they're there if I need them, but they basically are a hand up, like, all right, cool, no problem. Go to work. If you need anything from us or we need us to jump in, you give us a shout, and they're great at that. But basically, it's for the artist to start a relationship with the client and the brand. So I'll let them know, in my brief, I totally put it out there how I work, how I initially go through about my concept phases, whether I got to use, at home photography for certain poses. I'll do some photo bashing with a mixture of vector and go, okay, cool. Here's me about 5 different times in different action poses, but I'm doing this just for you to get a sense of like what that squiggly line thumbnail next to it, what it represents. I always throw down like a squiggly line thumbnail, chicken scratch next to like either an actual vector sketch or actual, me posing or my wife posing or my father-in-law posing or the dog posing, and going, okay, great, this is what's happening here. Okay, so instead of these squiggly lines, here's the next phase to make you feel comfortable as far as like trying to gauge your expectation as a client, as a brand. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not one that's always like, I want to do my own thing. Oh my God, I hate when the client gets involved. No, man, this is a collaborative effort. I'm providing a service. You're paying me to
Yeah.
have to do my best to understand your brand objective and your target audience. You see, a lot of people don't think that way, right?
No,
I'm
not at
hoping
all.
that they start thinking that way because it's a very, very productive. It's very efficient when
Yeah.
asking questions. When you want a client to go, why? How much is he asking for? Wow, we just need a pretty picture. No, you know what I mean? You're getting a lot more than that. You're getting a lot of strategy, right?
Absolutely,
Marketing
absolutely.
strategy. So yeah, it gets, I know how to run at my own pace. But when it came to this, I was like, oh man, this is great. Let's chop it up and say, okay, what do we focus on first? the key art or the 48 different poses. Because they have a production window. They got to send some of this stuff to China to get produced. They got to send it elsewhere. So I was like, what do you need quickly? And they're like, we need the 48 poses. Okay, great. Boom. There you go. There you go. The key art. Hey, did it. And they came back and like, oh my god, we need to include the Green Ranger. And it wasn't because of the sad story that followed soon after that. We actually added him in before it all, before the passing, and you know they're like, all right, great, and they're like, okay, cool. What's the second poster going to look like? And I was like, oh man, here's a whole series of helmets, and my sketches that I did for them were all in fact they're all in color, and they're like, whoa, this thing's done, and I'm like, no, those are sketches. And they're like, "Whoa, no, man, these are done. This is final. We're gonna submit it as final." And I'm like, "Whatever you want to do, man." And they submitted it, and they came back, and they're like,
Oh,
"No,
man.
we don't like them. Can you do it again?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, they're sketches. Of course, I could do it again." So the second key art was like a whole bunch of helmets, that I did it in a way that if they needed to segregate them to turn them into single helmets, they can. There's enough space around them. And that's
Nice,
thinking. Like
nice.
all the 48 poses that I did for them for packaging,
Yeah.
I did them with the intent, and I put in my presentation, and I, reinforced it through conversation that not only can you use this for packaging, but I'm going to definitely deliver them this tall. The final files are this big because if you want to use them in any of the retail shops as standees, you don't have to call me up and go, hey, Orlando, is there any way you could redo that artwork? Because now we want it the size of a standee. So all that's already price arranged at negotiation from day one with my crew at Mandela, where they're like, okay, cool, no problem. It's vector. I'm gonna do all my work this small so that I don't bog down my computer.
Sure.
And then when you give me the green light that it's approved and we're done, okay, great. Here you go. You don't have to call me back up if you're like, oh my God, somebody just came up internally in the office with an idea to make this thing a bunch of standees. No, you already have the artwork. Enjoy. Good luck.
You're an
Have fun.
entire marketing firm. Is That's what you are. You're not just a vector artist. You're thinking about, step 3, step 4, week 2, week 5, and that's
Yeah.
beautiful, man. I I can't imagine how much creativity and how much foresight that takes to kind of do stuff like that, man. That's amazing. That's incredible.
It's wild, man. It's wild, and it all comes through experience, man. Everything that you do in life has a reason. Everything you get
Absolutely.
shot down for has another reason. You know what I mean? Everything
Absolutely.
is about just these building blocks, and sometimes things come in very, very easy, and you got a fast lane to go there. I get really worried about fast lanes because if there isn't any really big learning curve or any type of like, oh man, I got to really think about this, then it's coming off too easy. Like I want
Sure.
some struggle. I want some mistakes, some mishaps, some failure, some learning. You know what I mean? That's a really great process for life, and for business.
Amen. I couldn't have said it better myself. Life is, like you mentioned, it's all about experiences. It's not about, failure. You don't really fail until you stop, until you give
Yeah.
up. That's what, kind of a lot of people say. I've heard a lot. Um, Kind of one last thing I want to mention. Happy belated birthday! I know you celebrated a birthday
it was
this
a
past
doozy, man.
weekend.
Wow.
I
Yeah.
I hope I hope it was great. You have a lot to celebrate. You've had so much work that's circulating around the world right now. This year alone, it's just incredible, man.
Thank you.
Um, Absolutely.
Thank
Your work is phenomenal, and also you're making the Latino community proud,
you.
because
Gracias.
your art encapsulates so much of that passion and so much of the heritage, no matter what it is. It's absolutely beautiful and spectacular. And I'm just happy that so many people are getting to see it. If you want to catch Orlando and all of his work, all you got to do is go check out his Instagram page to get all of the lovely, lovely work that he's doing right now. It's chock full of just incredible artwork. Go check it out and be sure to pick up a print anytime you can because these are absolute fire. And I want to thank you so much, brother, for from the bottom of my heart. I
Oh,
took a
gracias.
shot just reaching out. I was like,
No,
maybe we could pull something off, and you were willing to do it on short notice. So that means a lot to me. So thank you so much again for taking the
no, no,
time to do this with
no
me.
problem. Ted, de veras, gracias por todo. I mean, if we need to do the Spanish translation version of this and start from square one, we'll do it. I've got the time right now to do it. Um,
Hey,
but no, de verdad, for real. You know, we just like any culture out there, man. We have our beliefs, we have
absolutely,
our imaginations. We want to strive for more, and um, I'm very glad for not giving up, for all the support that I've had from my family and from my friends, all the folks that told me, go do something else, man. Your art's too crazy. Um, it's it helps build character. And in the art world, the first thing that you need to understand is that you're going to have to subject yourself to criticism every time you submit something. And
sure,
if you go in there with a chip on your shoulder and you're like, no, 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 it's my way or no way, you got to go in there. And this is something that I've learned back in my agency days when I was like a senior art director, and my creative director, Chris Fox, and my executive creative director, Ted Franklin, were like, we, before we would show the campaign or the advertising design to say the in-house account manager, before going to the client to show it off, we'd post everything on the walls, and rip it apart. But we would have a brief, we would have an objective. And if you wanted to support your vision for why you designed that advertising the way that it looks with that kind of messaging and that composition, you know, you better bring a whole assortment of support information to reinforce your vision, right? There's no point of saying, so somebody asks you, why did you do it that way? And you just go, because I felt like it. No, this isn't fine arts, man. In fine arts, you get away with that,
sure, sure,
and good luck trying to sell it right off every week. You know what I mean?
yeah,
People do it though, but people do it, and congratulations to those that do it. You know, but the greater essence of it is what I'm trying to point out here is that whenever you get tapped on the shoulder to do something cool with a client, a brand, it could be a restaurant that's asking for a mural. You want to make sure that you pay attention to them and their needs, and then go, okay, this is what I have in sight for you to represent your restaurant, to represent your movie, to represent your toys, to represent your t-shirts, whatever it might be. It's a collaborative, right? Whenever people are like, I get a client that's like, no, man, we want to give you like a blank slate. Do whatever you want to do. I'm like, no. I was like, do me a favor, write me up a brief, or at least send me an email with like some guardrails, some objectives, do's and do nots. That way I can get a better essence because I have a familiarity of what your brand is, but not this objective. I don't know what the goal is. Do you want to sell and
that's
move 5 million bottles of Jose Cuervo? I don't know. You know what I mean?
that's
So
incredible. Yeah.
the more that we're able to have a conversation to understand and grow, the better and more grease we're putting on the rails for this train to be able to motivate quicker instead of being stalled because of an ego or because of misunderstanding or not understanding. You know what I mean?
No,
Everything's about communication, man. Seriously.
I totally get it, and I think that is just sound advice for anybody who's trying to be an artist or is already in sort of the digital art space. Make it more collaborative. Listen to your clients, make it a collaborative effort, and
Mm-hmm.
focus on the narrative that they're trying to tell for that project.
Yeah.
All the things you've been
Seriously.
saying, it's just it makes so much sense, and yet like I'm sure 99% of people don't really think about certain stuff that way, certain projects or their work that way. So appreciate
One day they
everything
will.
you've mentioned.
One day they will. Trust me, man. Because I was man, when I was younger, I was like pissing vinegar. I was like, no, man, I'm going to do it my way, man. I want to do it my way. And then my way would push back the project timeline by 2 weeks. Now
Yeah.
it's I try to work as fast, as proficient, and efficient as possible, understanding the brief. If I don't get it, like on a project right now with major brand, right? And this major brand is deep. I mean, it has this whole following of fans, and everything is like very detailed, and it has big hierarchical storylines and storylines upon storylines. I know that the brand existed.
Sure.
I know somewhat about their world, but I don't eat, drink, sleep. I don't, I'm not there 100%. And sometimes it's not intimidation. It's I want to do the best job to represent this relationship and your brand and have your audience, because they're going to criticize it. Everybody criticizes everything, whether good, bad, heavy, light. They criticize everything. And I said, I want this to be
Yep.
able, when it's criticized, to be criticized for the good and not for the bad. You know what I mean? So
Right.
if we need to have, you know, conversations, and you're sending me a brief and I go, hey, I just shot a whole bunch of holes in your brief because I don't understand a few things. I'm replying back, not just in words, but I set up a document, a visual document of where I'm pulling in assets and where I'm doing little spot illustrations to help create like a mood slash storyboard for each of my questions. That way, when they get it, it's just not reading an email and going, okay, I don't understand this. I don't understand that. No, I'm going, I don't understand this. Do you mean these characters? And these characters, do they go with this character? Do they go with this kind of, spaceship or this kind of wardrobe? Like, I want to isolate everything to a point where I have no more questions. It's only a green light and a blank canvas for me to go, cool, I get the whole thing. Let me go to town. Because when I start sketching, I'm doing it all in vector, right? And the beauty with that is that I can get really, really deep, really quickly, very colorful mood lighting. And I love sending these things in because instead of just doing pencil sketches, they're able to see everything in full bloom and go, whoa, okay. I just saved us 2 weeks on the project time.
That's true.
You know,
That
I
is
mean, I'm
true.
not burning any bridges where, hey, because I've been on that side. I've been a design director. I've been a creative director. I know when I hire an illustrator, okay, cool. It's going to take a week for them to do their pencils. And then it's going to take me maybe 3 days to maybe 2 weeks, depending upon how busy I am, to get back to them. We just talked three weeks right there. And we're not even anywhere near seeing a colored comp yet. I do that stuff right off the bat just to save time and get them going, whoa, this is why we work with Mexifunk. This is why we team up with Mexifunk. This is why we love collaborating with Mexifunk. You know,
Absolutely.
and sometimes people might go, but doesn't that backfire? Doesn't that leave so much time for the client to, you know, to nitpick? And well, that's the job, man.
That's
They're getting
part of
paid.
it.
Yeah, that's part of it. Like, there's no rule that says they're not allowed to nitpick, but there are stipulations where you say, hey, listen, you know what? Let's try to do this in 3 rounds. Standard 3 rounds. If we go into a fourth round, we might need to revisit some type of estimate. You know, but there's, that's not on every project. Sometimes
I
I'm
got
doing
you.
these. Sometimes I'm doing these projects, and they're we're talking about like four-figure numbers, four-figure digit paychecks coming in, and you know if I got it with like an art rep, they're like, hey, how many rounds do you think you're gonna do? And I'm like, we don't even need to talk about rounds at this point because I'm sure that you know they're having so much faith, confidence in the investment of teaming up with me that I'm not going to nitpick them and say, oh, you know what? If we can't get it done in 4 rounds, I'm going to want more money, and I'm going to want more money after that. I'm going to want more money after that. That usually happens when there's a very small budget or small request to do something, and you're trying to safeguard the time and energy that you're investing. and trying to be proficient up front
Yeah.
during the brief and asking all the questions to go, okay,
Yeah.
great. I have enough that I feel confident that we can do this within 3 to 4 rounds. Anything beyond that, you have it stipulated within the contract or the price estimate that says we will need to revisit anything after four on a daily basis and come up with its own price. You know what I mean?
Wow. You've thought of
Yeah,
everything. You've
you
thought of
have to.
every you thought of every angle.
No, I mean, well, it's because I've experienced every angle in the past. Being
I
an
gotcha.
illustrator for being your own studio services within PepsiCo. You know, they, I outbeat Pepsi one day on a Mountain Dew ad while I was working as a creative director down in Manhattan, right, for a marketing, you know, sports publishing company.
Yeah.
And at the time we were doing this Toys R Us magazine called R Zone. And the way that we positioned R Zone to Toys R Us was that we were going to create a periodical, a magazine that was all about lifestyle. It would have three major feature articles in it, but everything else would have your gaming type of lifestyle essence, whether it's tips and tricks, whether it's a focus on special weapons, whether it's um, outside of that, whether it's moving, and talking about the latest games, whether it's talking about the latest, headphones that are coming out to play, peripherals. It was basically like a shopping catalog, but disguised as a magazine lifestyle.
Ah,
And
interesting.
when we sold the idea into Toys R Us, they were like, okay, well, how much is this going to cost at register? And they were like, it's free. And they're like, what? How are we going to make money off this free periodical, off this free magazine that we're going to print 4 times a year and quarterly? Or first it started off as quarterly, and then 4 times, and we had like different instances for like the holiday issue and going back to school, whatever. But they're like, we need to put a price tag on this, and I was like, no, you don't. It'll be more alluring for Billy and Mom to just pick this up and go, whoa, there's a poster in here too. Whoa, okay, cool, and it's free. Oh my god! And they're like, how do we make the money? And I was like, well, by the ad sales. You need
They
to
come
sell
back.
ads in the magazine.
Ooh, there you go.
All right. So we sell each page for a certain amount, a double page spread for a higher amount, and there's premiums. And we can set up deals as far as like different brands that want to be in there. So one day my account person comes up and they're like, hey, I just sold an ad. Are we too late for this issue? And I was like, man, I am going to the printer tomorrow. What do they? Who's it for? And they're like, it's for Pepsi. It's for Mountain Dew. And I was like, oh, yes, awesome, awesome. You know. And they're like, okay, great. The artwork should be coming in to you by end of day. 3 o'clock comes rolling. The artwork's not even there. And I'm like,
You
okay,
know
now
what?
I'm getting worried. People don't want to send me the artwork. Who's it coming from? And they named the agency. The agency was like, you know, an hour away from where I am physically. So I was like, you know what? I went into the owner of the company, sat down with him and the VP. And I said, listen, I got an idea. I'm going to need some time, but I want to do an ad for Mountain Dew. That would be for the magazine. We're waiting for an ad. We don't have it. I don't want to lose this. I don't want to lose Pepsi. And they're like, okay, great. What do you want to do? And I was like, I just need 3 hours to do an illustration. They're like, okay, great. Is that enough? And I was like, can you get on the horn right now with Pepsi and tell them that in 3 hours we're going to present to them? Can they hold on to their offices and not go home? All right. And they're like, are you sure that you're going to be able to deliver on point? Like, you don't even have a brief. You don't even have anything. And I was like, I've got an idea as far as like what their outgoing commercial message is for their gaming audience. All right. At that time, they had a slogan called "Do the Do."
That's right.
All right. So what I
That's
did
right.
was like, okay, great. I I got an image of a high res image of their Mountain Dew bottle, placed it in the center. I used the green and white silver graphics of the R Zone brand property because it's in our magazine, so we're allowed to do that. And I put it straight, and I basically had it flanked by all the different video game genres. So at the bottom, you had like sports, you had like a catcher and a football tackler going that way, and a hockey guy coming this way, you know. Over here, you had the mafioso guy, the pimp suit with the scar and putting on a glove. Over here, you had the sorceress, the witch for all the like the D&D type games, with the sword, and she's kind of blue skin with like red hair and like a crown. And then all the way up top coming out was like this crazy killer cyborg with like crab claws coming at you, right? And the sign off using their own brand vernacular,
Oh
which
yeah,
is do the do. I said, hey, before you go out saving the universe, do the do. So basically, fuel up with Mountain Dew before you jump into any of your gaming venues.
brilliant,
Did
brilliant.
the whole illustration, the write up in less than 3 hours, got it back, jumped on a call with Pepsi, represented it, and they said, holy crap, this is better than what the agency's been doing.
You're hired.
We got Pepsi as a main client. The main agency that has them as an agency of record to do all their work calls me up and they're like, man, we're really pissed off at you. And I'm like, no reason to. No reason to. I had to do what I had to do. You guys left the
Mm.
door open. They do their investigations. A week later, they call me up and they're like, "Hey, we want to know whether you might be able to come up and have lunch with us
Uh oh.
at our headquarters." And I'm like, "Listen, man, I know what this is all about, bro. You know what? I'm Mexican Cuban. You're gonna do a hit on me. I'm not gonna come back home, man. I'm gonna go missing. I'm gonna go missing somewhere in the hills of Connecticut, man." I was like, "No, man." I was like, "Good try, good try." I'm like, "No, honestly, come up, have lunch with us. We have an offer for you." And I went up there, had lunch, and they said, "Listen, we're trying to bring back the actual studios from the 60s and 70s, the agency studios where you have your in-house creative team, but then you also have your in-house production team, and
Mm.
everything works. Not, I mean, they work in unison with one another, but the production team, almost is like a studio within a studio within an agency. So they do kind of different billings. They do kind of different costs to generate more sales.
Sure.
So they're like, we're missing a vital element within this equation. We need an artist bullpen, and we want you to start this part of the team up of the agency. And I was like, whoa, you mean I get to draw all day? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, ooh, that might be that could be a good change up because I was doing design, I was doing layout, I was the creative director. I had a team with me,
Sure.
and I was doing my own illustrations for the magazines. So when I got to, well, I said yes, but I said, listen, who do I report to? Who do I need to, am I my own kind of boss? But I have to report to somebody every month, show them like how much we're making, and they're like, yeah. The cool thing was that I started to learn about art buying, that whole process, right? Is there were art buyers for the agency that they're setting up fashion shoots for photographers and they're trying to get illustrators for other companies. So my main job was to be the third quote, right? Basically, when you have a creative agency and you have a team of designers that wants to hire, say, Shepard Fairey, right, or another big artist, they'll come up with like connecting, contacting his people and going, hey, how much does it cost to do this ad, this illustration for Pepsi? And they'll send them that price, that estimate. They'll call up another person. They'll need three of them. All right.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
I I said for every time you do that, me being the in-house illustrator, I want to be that third quote, that third go-to person. All right. Which meant that, you know,
You
starting
can
off early,
you can
I needed
compete with
I needed to
everything else.
compete, but I needed to be able to be almost like a chameleon, to be able to do different styles, different, not trying to copy people blatantly, but just, offer up something that's just, whoa, okay, that's not that person, that artist, but wow, it looks either cooler or fits the brand better or the initiative, and it was wild because I didn't go home. I was the only illustrator, and I would use the in-house art reps as reps, the in-house art buyers as reps. So if I'm basically at my desk doing these illustrations that I need to have done and sent in to the team to look at, I can't go to every meeting. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to use you guys as reps. You guys go to the meetings. You guys got to get the brief. You come back. We'll have a sit down, have some coffee. We talk about what the job is. Do we take it? Do we not take it? whole negotiation, you know. And then uh, it was really really cool because I ended up working on bringing Fido Dido, the white leggy stringy character for Seven Up, brought him up to a more contemporary
Mm,
level, redesigned him, right?
yeah.
I ended up doing a whole bunch of characters, flavor profiles for Mirinda, which is like the competitor to Fanta, right?
Oh,
Mirinda,
okay.
and I did all these characters for like this sci-fi gaming experience back then, and it was the first time that I had someone from my team who was like the account director go, "Hey, you know what? It's a shame that you did these for us," and I'm like, "Why? They came easy." And they're like, no, because you did them while you're under this agency's roof, Pepsi's roof. They own
So
outright
they own everything?
characters. Now, if you were to do them at home, in your studio, anywhere else other than under this roof, you would have a legal foot into negotiating fees or royalties for these characters that you've given birth to.
Wow.
You know, and the
Was
person
that
who gave
like
me
a
that,
punch in the gut?
yeah, it was a big punch in the gut, but it was like it helped me learn a lot very quickly about the usage and ownership of artwork within the commercial space.
Sure, sure.
Now you have contracts that you got to be careful for. Work for hires, where you're basically just signing it all over back to the brand, and they get to do whatever they want to do, repurpose it, reissue it, how many times they want without having to pay you. You know, so you got to be very, very careful with some of these contracts. And there's nothing wrong with reading some of these contracts and going, you know what, I don't like this. Can we negotiate this?
Yeah.
You know, sometimes they're like, oh, well, it's our legal team. We're going to have to talk to our legal team. Well, how bad do you really want to, collaborate with me? Because I have an issue with this thing. You know,
Is it getting more challenging, the contracts that you're getting delivered to you, emailed to you, are they getting more challenging? Are they sort of trying to take more, or give you
no,
less
no, they do.
control?
They always get challenging. Like for right now, everybody's like, and I love it. I get these DMs like, hey, when is the Mexifunk book going to come out? We want a book.
Ooh.
You've been in this industry for, you're now 51, man. Like, when does the book come out? And I got to tell you that a lot of the projects that have helped elevate my style and my creativity with some of the properties that are there, and people are like, man, I love what you did for this movie poster. I love what you did here. You know, I'm having to go back and call those people up and negotiate usage, permission.
Sure,
I
sure.
can't just throw them into a book and be like, okay, great, I'm going to sell my book. They'll shut me down.
Yeah,
So I have to call all of them up and say, listen, I'm trying to put a book together. This is what's going on. And then, I got to put into percentage, you know, how many pieces of work do I have in the book that's under this particular brand or this particular movie studio? Because if it's over 25%, 9 out of 10 times, it's either a no or you need to buy a license. And to buy a license is
wow.
like, especially for like something big and household name, right? With like
Yeah,
ears, could
yeah.
be like 25 to $45,000 to even more.
Wow.
So I'm negotiating with some of those folks right now, even with the cool guys that with the ears. I love them, to be like, hey, uh, this is what I'm working on. This is what my team's working on. You
Yeah,
know, um, but it's you got to be careful with contracts. You got to be careful, and sometimes there's just sometimes you got to basically sign it if you want to do the job, and they'll be like, hey, we own the artwork, and it's like, yeah, you own the artwork, but I didn't show you this one, and I didn't show you that one, and I didn't show you this one, and I didn't show you this one. So all these other ones that I didn't show because I didn't throw them into the presentation deck, I own them.
there you go.
You know
There
what I
you
mean?
go.
I'll be able to call up a gallery, and I'll call up a book publisher and go, hey, how's this? It's continuing to hustle. You know,
Absolutely.
it
Well,
happens a lot.
I cannot wait for the day that I get to see potentially a gallery of Mexifunk. Uh,
Oh, that's coming out.
That would be incredible, man.
Hey, I'm right now. This is like I haven't mentioned anybody this yet, and I
Uh-oh.
gotta
Uh-oh.
not
Breaking news.
not,
Breaking
not
news.
not mentioning too many names. There's always something that I'm in the middle of, right? It's just the NDAs that I sign. Like right
Sure, of
now,
course.
I'm like doing four different movie DVDs, right? I'll hint that most of them are horror. One of them is an Academy Award winner. I can't tell you when they won it. Could be recently, could be years ago. Who knows?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And a lot of that work is like a lot of those projects. God, I hate using that word. Um, are wrapped up in such a legal bind that I can't mention too much about
Sure.
them. Right. So what happens? My Instagram suffers because I'm not posting every day. So the algorithm is like working against me. Whatever. That's a whole different conversation.
I hear
But
you.
when it comes to what I just mentioned about this groundbreaking news about some gallery, I'm actually in the works of negotiating three solo shows. I'm actually considering turning one of them into a group show. And I might be tapping some of my friends out there to see whether they might be wanting to submit under this theme. But these shows will be all on the West Coast, all in Los Angeles. All right. So for those of you that are out
Nice.
there, that's cool. It'll definitely be before this year's over. All right. So there you go.
Breaking news.
Exclusive. Yeah. I gotta be careful those crazy faces, man. My mom goes, she's like, don't do, oye, niño, te da ese dolor que hacer esa cara así tan extraños, coño. I'm like, ma, come on. It's okay. It's all
Well,
right.
that's awesome, brother. That's gonna be spectacular when it happens. It's gonna be a hot ticket. It's gonna sell out, whatever you call it. Oh man, I can't wait to hear about it. And if I'm lucky enough, I'll get to see it with my own eyes. But yeah, it's incredible. You are an incredible artist, man. Congrats on all your success. I know there's more to come. Can't wait to find out what this new project is that you got working. I have a couple of
Mhm.
ideas, but I'm not going to mention them because I don't want to get
Hey,
into
I mean,
that.
if you have ideas to collaborate on something, let me know, man. We just got to find the time for it, man. You know what I mean? So
Hey,
if you need something, man, something exclusive for the countdown. I mean, City Geeks. I mean, we can probably do something, have some fun
my
here and there.
goodness, that is like music to my ears, man. You have no
You know?
idea. That would be spectacular. But thank you for doing this. It's been absolutely incredible to talk to you, brother. And like I mentioned, can't wait to see what other stuff you got coming down the pipeline. It's fantastic. And again, follow Mexifunk on Instagram today to get notified when his next piece comes out or when this gallery drops somewhere on the West Coast before the year is over. Orlando Arocena, thank you so much, brother, for taking time to talk with me. And all the best to you and your family, man.
Oh, no, gracias a ti, a todos, gracias a toda la audiencia de los geeks. Thank you so much to everybody who's tuning in. And now we get down to the Spanish. We go from Spanish to English. I just want to say thank you so much for the opportunity and for the support. And honestly, now we're connected, man. So like, if you need anything, give me a shout. So I can return the support. And it's a jazz, man. I get so much. I have so much fun doing this. Even though sometimes it's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and it's not that easy. But I enjoy it, man. I'm glad that you guys enjoyed as well. So hopefully we could play in the future.
Absolutely, brother. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Hey, no problem, man. Take care. Thank you.